It was a bright morning. The sun was shining, and birds were singing outside Emily's small apartment. She smiled as she looked into the mirror, fixing her hair. Today was special. Today, her manager had promised to announce her small promotion. She had worked hard for many months, and now her efforts were finally going to be rewarded. Emily grabbed her bag and left for work. As she walked down the street, she thought about how proud her father would be. He always told her, hard work never goes to waste. Today, she would prove him right. When Emily entered the office building, everything felt normal. People smiled at her. Her best friend at work, Sarah, waved from her desk. Emily smiled back, feeling the warm happiness inside. She sat at her desk and opened her laptop, ready for a great day. An hour later, her manager, Mr. Jacobs, called her into his office. Emily quickly stood up, fixing her clothes. She felt a little nervous but mostly excited. She thought, maybe he will congratulate me in front of everyone. Maybe there will be a small party. But when she entered Mr. Jacobs's office, the atmosphere was different. His face was serious, and two other people from the human resources team were sitting there. Emily's heart started beating faster. "Emily, please sit down," Mr. Jacobs said coldly. She sat down slowly, confused. Without any friendly words, without a smile, Mr. Jacobs spoke in a hard voice. "Emily, we have decided to terminate your employment, effective immediately." The words hit her like a slap. Her mind could not understand what he just said. "To do what?" Emily stammered, her voice shaking. "You are fired," he repeated simply. Tears filled her eyes, but she fought them back. "Why? What did I do wrong?" Mr. Jacobs looked uncomfortable but said nothing. One of the HR ladies slid a paper towards her. It was her termination letter. No reason was written clearly, only formal words. Cold words. Emily felt the whole world spinning. Just this morning, she was dreaming about her promotion. Now she was losing everything. "You can collect your belongings now," said the HR lady. "Security will escort you." People outside were already whispering. Emily could feel their eyes on her as she stepped out of the office. Sarah looked at her, pretending to be surprised. Emily wanted to run away, but her legs felt heavy. She packed her few things, a photo frame with her father's picture, a small plant, and her notebooks. Every step she took towards the exit door felt like a punishment. At the door, she turned back one last time. This was the place where she gave her heart, her late nights, her weekends. And now, they were throwing her away like she was nothing. Emily stepped outside. The sun was still shining, but for her, the world had turned dark. She sat down on the stairs outside the building. Tears finally came, and she didn't stop them. People passed by, some giving her strange looks, but she didn't care anymore. Why did this happen? She asked herself over and over again. What did I do to deserve this? Her phone buzzed. It was a notification, a reminder of the dinner she had planned with her father tonight. She had wanted to tell him about her promotion, make him proud. Now how could she even face him? Her hands trembled as she held the phone. She thought about calling him. Just hearing his voice would make her feel better. But no, she didn't want to disappoint him. She put the phone back in her bag and looked up at the sky. A strong wind blew, making her shiver. Everything felt cold, even though the sun was bright. In the distance, she saw Sarah coming out of the building, laughing with another colleague. Emily's heart hurt even more. Sarah had promised to always stand by her side. Why didn't she help me? Why didn't she say anything? Questions filled her mind, but there were no answers. She wiped her tears and stood up slowly. She didn't know where to go, but she knew she couldn't stay here. Not anymore. As she walked away from the building, one thing was clear. Her life had changed forever in just a few minutes. And deep inside, a tiny voice whispered, "This is not the end, Emily. This is just the beginning." Emily walked slowly down the crowded street, her small box of office things pressed tightly against her chest. Her legs felt weak, and her mind was full of confusion. She had no job now, no plan, no idea what she had done wrong. The faces around her blurred as tears filled her eyes again. She wiped them quickly, not wanting strangers to see her sadness. I must be strong, she told herself. But inside, she felt like a small, broken child. After walking for a while, Emily sat down on a bench near a coffee shop. She needed to think. She needed to understand. Suddenly, she remembered Sarah, her best friend at work. Sarah had always been there for her. They had laughed together, shared lunches, and even cried over difficult projects. If anyone knew the truth, it would be Sarah. Maybe she can help me now, Emily thought. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and texted Sarah. Hi, Sarah. I don't know what happened today. Can you please talk to me? I need a friend. She waited, watching the screen. Minutes passed. No reply. Feeling more desperate, Emily stood up and decided to go back towards the office building. Maybe Sarah was still around. When she reached the corner near the office, she heard familiar voices. She froze. It was Sarah, standing just a few feet away, laughing with another colleague, Daniel. Emily stayed hidden behind a wall, not wanting to interrupt. But then, she heard something that made her blood run cold. Daniel said, laughing, "Wow, you really pulled it off. I can't believe they actually fired her." Sarah laughed too, a loud, cruel sound. "It was easy," she said. "I just told Mr. Jacobs that Emily was mishandling the client accounts. I even sent him those fake emails we prepared." Daniel whistled. "You're smart, Sarah. Now you'll get that promotion for sure." Emily covered her mouth with her hand, trying not to scream. Her heart shattered into a million pieces. Sarah, her best friend, had betrayed her, lied about her, destroyed her career for a promotion. Emily stumbled backward, knocking over a trash can by accident. The loud noise made Sarah and Daniel look around sharply. Emily turned and ran as fast as she could. She didn't stop until she reached the small park, a few streets away. She dropped her box on the ground and sat on the grass, gasping for air. "Why?" she cried silently. "Why would she do this to me?" Memories of Sarah came flooding back. Sarah comforting her when her mother died. Sarah celebrating her birthday. Sarah promising, "I'll always be your friend." It was all a lie, Emily realized bitterly. All of it. She hugged her knees tightly and rocked back and forth. The betrayal hurt more than losing the job. After some time, when her breathing became calmer, Emily wiped her tears again. She looked at the sky. It was starting to get cloudy now, matching the darkness she felt inside. She knew she couldn't go back to the company. No one would believe her. Sarah had already poisoned their minds, and Emily had no proof. Her phone buzzed again. It was another message, this time from the company's HR department. "Please return your ID card and laptop tomorrow by 5 p.m. Another sharp pain stabbed her heart. They don't even want to hear my side. They already decided I am guilty. She put the phone away and closed her eyes. She thought about calling her father. He would know what to do. But a strong wave of shame washed over her. Her father had worked so hard all this life to give her a good future. He believed she was strong, smart, responsible. How could I tell him I failed? She thought. How could I make him worry about me again? Emily stayed in the park until it got dark. Cold winds began to blow, and people started leaving. But Emily had no energy to move. She was tired. Tired of trusting the wrong people. Tired of pretending everything was fine. Finally, she stood up and gathered her things. Her small box now felt heavier than before. As she walked towards the bus stop, she promised herself something. I will not let this destroy me. I may have fallen today, but I will rise again. Somehow. Her face was wet from tears, but her eyes held a new fire, a fire of quiet strength. Somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered, "The truth always comes out. One day, they will all see." And with that thought, Emily disappeared into the night. A broken girl now, but a fighter at heart. The night felt colder than usual. Emily sat quietly at the bus stop, holding her small box close to her chest. The streets were almost empty now. The city, once full of light and noise, felt dark and lonely, just like her heart. A bus came and stopped in front of her. The door opened, and the driver looked at her, waiting. But Emily just shook her head. She had no idea where to go. Home. It didn't even feel like home anymore. Slowly, the bus drove away, leaving Emily alone again. She stood up and walked towards her apartment. Her steps were heavy, and every few minutes, she had to wipe away the tears that kept falling. She tried to stay strong, but inside, she was breaking piece by piece. When she reached her apartment building, she paused at the door. A cold fear washed over her. She had lost her job. How would she pay her rent now? She walked up the stairs slowly. Her hands were shaking as she pulled out her keys. But before she could even unlock the door, she noticed something strange. There was a yellow paper stuck to her door. Her heart dropped. She pulled the paper off and read it. It was an eviction notice. Final warning. Payment overdue. Eviction in 3 days. Emily leaned against the wall, feeling dizzy. She closed her eyes and took deep breaths. It felt like the whole world was falling apart around her. First her job, now her home. What did I do to deserve this? She thought bitterly. She finally opened the door and went inside. Her small apartment looked even smaller tonight. Everything inside reminded her of dreams she once had. Dreams of a happy life, a successful career, a proud father. She placed the box on the kitchen table and sank into a chair. Her stomach growled, reminding her she hadn't eaten all day. She opened the fridge, but it was almost empty. Just a bottle of water and a few slices of bread. She took a piece of bread, but after one bite, she put it down. She had no appetite. Not tonight. Sitting alone in the dark, Emily took out her phone. She thought about calling her father again. Maybe if she heard his voice, she could feel safe. Maybe he would know how to fix everything. But when she unlocked the screen, she saw the text she had sent him hours ago. Still no reply. Her heart sank even deeper. Maybe he's busy. Maybe he's angry. Maybe I'm just not good enough anymore. She placed the phone face down on the table and buried her face in her hands. The silence in the apartment was heavy. It screamed louder than any words. Suddenly, the phone buzzed loudly on the table. Emily's heart jumped. She grabbed it quickly. It was an unknown number. Hesitating for a second, she answered the call. "Hello," she said, her voice shaking. There was a pause. Then a rough voice spoke. "Miss Emily Anderson." "Yes," she replied carefully. "This is from the building management. You need to clear your apartment in 3 days, or we will change the locks." Emily's heart dropped. She could barely find her voice. "But I just lost my job. Please, give me a little more time." The man on the phone sighed. "I'm sorry, miss. Rules are rules." The call ended, just like that. Emily stared at the phone in disbelief. No mercy. No second chances. She dropped the phone on the table and leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. Tears rolled down her cheeks silently. Is this really happening? She wondered. Am I really losing everything? Hours passed. Emily didn't move. She just sat there, lost in the darkness of her thoughts. Finally, when the clock showed 2:00 a.m., she forced herself to stand up. She needed to find help. Anyone. Someone who could understand. But she had no friends left. Not anymore. Sarah had made sure of that. She thought about asking her neighbors. They were kind, but she felt too ashamed to explain her situation. I'm alone, she realized. Completely alone. Emily grabbed a small bag and packed a few clothes, her important documents, and the photo of her father, the only thing that gave her strength. As she zipped the bag shut, she made herself one more promise. I won't give up, she whispered into the empty room. Not now. Not ever. She wiped her tears, took a deep breath, and opened the door. The cold wind slapped her face, but she didn't flinch. She walked down the stairs into the dark street, unsure where she was going, but knowing one thing for sure: she had to survive. Somewhere deep in the night, the stars were shining, hidden behind the clouds. Emily couldn't see them yet, but one day she would. Emily walked through the empty streets with her small bag slung over her shoulder. The city, which once felt full of life, now looked like a cold and distant place. Streetlights flickered, and the wind whispered sad songs through the trees. She didn't know where she was going. She just kept walking, her shoes hitting the pavement softly, one after another. Every step felt heavier than the last. Hours passed, and her legs ached with tiredness. Her stomach growled again, but she ignored it. Right now, food was not important. Right now, she just needed a place to stay, some corner of the world where she could breathe. Finally, she reached a small, quiet park. There were a few benches, and the area was lit by one lonely street lamp. She looked around. No one was there, just her and the night. Emily sat down on a cold bench and hugged her bag tightly. The wind was sharp, but at least here she could sit for a while without anyone asking her to leave. As she sat there, lost in her painful thoughts, a small voice broke the silence. "Excuse me, miss. Are you all right?" Emily jumped a little. She looked up and saw an old woman standing nearby. The woman wore a thick, worn-out coat and had kind eyes. She looked poor herself, but there was warmth in her voice. Emily hesitated, then nodded weakly. "I'm fine, just resting," she whispered. The old woman smiled gently. "You look cold and tired, dear. If you want, there's a small shelter nearby. They give food and let people sleep there for the night. It's not fancy, but it's safe." Emily's heart filled with a strange mix of emotions: fear, hope, and shame. A shelter. She never thought her life would come to this. But tonight, she had no choice. She stood up slowly. "Thank you. Can you show me the way?" she asked, her voice almost breaking. The old woman nodded and began walking. Emily followed her silently, holding her bag close. They walked for about 10 minutes until they reached a small building tucked between two bigger ones. A broken sign above the door read, "Hope House, shelter for those in need." The old woman pushed the door open. Inside, it was warm and smelled like soup. A few people were sitting at tables, eating quietly. Others were lying on small beds along the walls. A kind-looking man at the desk greeted them. "New here?" he asked Emily. She nodded shyly. The man smiled. "Welcome to Hope House. You're safe here. Come, we'll get you some food first." Emily's eyes filled with tears again, but this time, they were not just tears of sadness. There was a small piece of gratitude inside them, too. She followed the man to the kitchen area where he handed her a bowl of hot soup and a piece of bread. Sitting at a table, Emily ate slowly. The food tasted better than anything she had eaten in days. Every bite warmed her body and soul a little more. After eating, the man showed her to an empty bed in the corner. It was small, just a mattress and a thin blanket, but for Emily, it felt like a luxury. She sat on the bed, holding the warm blanket around her, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to breathe without fear. The old woman who had helped her waved from across the room before leaving. Emily gave her a small, grateful smile. Lying down on the mattress, Emily stared at the cracked ceiling. The world outside was still dark. Her problems were still big. Her heart was still broken. But here, in this small shelter, she found a tiny light, a little kindness from strangers, a little warmth in the cold night. Maybe not everyone is like Sarah, Emily thought. Maybe there are still good people in the world. Before she could think more, sleep pulled her into its arms. For the first time in many nights, Emily slept without nightmares. The next morning, the shelter served simple breakfast, oatmeal and tea. Emily ate quietly, feeling stronger with every spoonful. After breakfast, the same kind man came to her. His name was Mr. Harris. He sat across from her and said, "We sometimes have small jobs posted on the board. Cleaning, helping in the kitchen, things like that. It's not much, but it's honest work. You can earn a few dollars while you figure things out." Emily looked at the board. There were a few papers pinned up, small jobs that paid little money. But to her, they were golden opportunities. She nodded eagerly. "I would love to help." Mr. Harris smiled warmly. "Good. You're stronger than you think, Emily. Just don't lose hope. Bad times don't last forever." His words touched her heart. For the first time since she lost everything, Emily felt a small spark inside her. A spark of hope. A spark of strength. She still didn't know how she would fix her life. She still didn't know how she would face her father or fight back against the lies. But she knew one thing now. She would not give up. No matter how dark the world became, she would find her way back to the light. One step at a time. Days passed slowly for Emily at the shelter. Every morning, she helped in the kitchen, cleaned the floors, and sometimes served food to others. It wasn't a real job. It didn't pay much. But it gave her something she had lost, a small feeling of purpose. Every night, she lay on the thin mattress, looking at the ceiling, wondering how everything went so wrong. And every morning, she got up and tried again. Still, deep inside, Emily carried a heavy pain. The betrayal, the loss of her dreams, the fear of the future. But she also carried a small light now, the belief that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. One evening, after a long, tiring day, Emily sat outside the shelter on the steps. The air was cool, and the city lights sparkled in the distance. She pulled out her phone, which she kept turned off most days to save battery. Tonight, she decided to turn it on. As the phone lit up, dozens of missed calls and messages appeared. Most were from unknown numbers, maybe bill collectors or office messages she didn't want to read. But then, one message caught her eye. It was from her father. Her heart skipped a beat. With trembling hands, she opened the message. "Emily, call me when you can. I heard about what happened. I am coming." Emily stared at the words, tears filling her eyes. He knew. Somehow he knew. She wanted to call him immediately, but her battery showed only 5%. Still, she didn't care. She pressed the call button and held the phone to her ear. It rang once, twice. Then a deep, familiar voice answered. "Emily." "Dad," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Oh, my baby," he said, his voice full of emotion. "Where are you? Are you safe?" Emily couldn't stop the tears now. "Yes, I'm at a shelter. I lost everything, Dad. My job, my apartment. I didn't know what to do." There was a long pause on the line. Then he said, in a calm but strong voice, "Listen to me carefully. None of this is your fault. I know the truth. I'm coming to you. Stay where you are." Before Emily could say anything else, the call dropped. The battery died. She sat there, holding the dead phone, feeling a mixture of fear and hope. Her father was coming. Her father, who had always been her protector, her hero. Maybe, just maybe, she was not as alone as she thought. The next morning, Emily woke up early. She helped clean the kitchen as usual, but her heart wasn't heavy today. Something inside her told her that change was coming. Around noon, while she was wiping the tables, Mr. Harris called out, "Emily, someone is here asking for you." Confused and nervous, she wiped her hands and walked towards the front door. There, standing tall and strong, was her father. He looked exactly the same, his gray hair neatly combed, his sharp eyes full of power. He wore a dark, expensive suit, and behind him stood two serious-looking men in black suits, his personal security guards. Emily froze. For a moment, she couldn't believe it was real. But then he opened his arms wide and smiled warmly. "My little fighter," he said. Emily ran into his arms, and he hugged her tightly, as if he would never let her go again. Tears streamed down her face, but this time, they were tears of relief. "You're safe now," he whispered into her hair. "I promise you." After a few minutes, they sat down together inside the shelter office. Mr. Harris brought them tea and left them alone. Her father held her hands and said, "I found out everything, Emily. The company, the lies, everything Sarah did." Emily looked at him with wide eyes. "How?" He smiled slightly. "I have my ways. I have contacts in the city. After you stopped answering my calls, I got worried. I started asking questions." He continued, "I spoke to a lawyer. We have proof now. Emails, recordings, witness statements. Sarah's betrayal will not stay hidden." Emily couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Dad, I don't want revenge. I just want my life back." Her father nodded. "And you will have it. We will clear your name. And we will make sure that no one ever dares to hurt you like this again." He paused, looking around the small shelter room. "You don't belong here," he said firmly. "You belong where you can grow, where your heart can heal." He stood up and held out his hand. "Come home, Emily." Emily looked at him, her strong, proud father, and felt the old strength return to her heart. She wiped her tears, took his hand, and stood up. Maybe the world had broken her. Maybe she had fallen harder than ever before. But she was still standing. And now she had someone powerful standing beside her. Her journey was not over. In fact, it was just beginning. As they walked out of the shelter, Emily turned back one last time. She gave a small, thankful smile to the place that had given her light in her darkest hour. Then she turned back to the future, a future she was ready to fight for. Because now she was not alone. Now she had hope and power, and nothing could stop her. Emily sat quietly in the back seat of her father's black car as it moved through the busy city streets. Her father sat beside her, talking on the phone, giving quick, sharp orders. His face was calm but serious. The two security guards followed behind in another car. Emily felt like she was dreaming. Just a few days ago, she had nothing. No home, no job, no hope. And now she was sitting beside the most powerful man she knew, her father, on the way to get her life back. The car stopped in front of a tall glass building, the headquarters of the company where she had once worked, where she had been humiliated and thrown out. Her hand shook a little as she stepped out of the car. "Are you ready?" her father asked, his voice firm but kind. Emily nodded. She was scared, but she was also angry. She was ready to fight for herself. They entered the building together. People inside turned to stare. Some whispered. Some moved out of the way quickly. Everyone knew who her father was. A man with wealth, power, and a name that could open or close doors. They rode the elevator to the top floor. When the doors opened, Emily saw familiar faces, coworkers who had once smiled at her, now looking nervous and guilty. And there, standing near the big meeting room, was Sarah. Sarah's smile froze when she saw Emily and her father walking toward her. She tried to speak, but Emily's father raised a hand to stop her. "Save your lies," he said coldly. "The truth will speak now." They walked straight into the meeting room, where the company's directors were already waiting. Her father had arranged this meeting, and nobody had the power to say no. The room fell silent as they entered. Emily's father placed a thick folder on the table and pushed it toward the directors. "In this folder," he said, "you will find proof of what really happened." One of the directors, Mr. Benson, opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside were printed emails, voice recordings, and statements from other employees, all showing how Sarah had lied, cheated, and pushed Emily out to take her place. The evidence was too clear, too strong. There was no way to deny it. Sarah's face turned pale. She opened her mouth to defend herself, but no words came out. Emily's father stood tall and strong. "You fired the wrong person," he said sharply. You trusted a liar and betrayed the only honest worker you had." The directors looked ashamed. Mr. Benson cleared his throat. We are very sorry, Mr. Anderson. And to you, Miss Emily, we were misled." Another director added, "We will immediately remove Sarah from her position and offer Miss Emily a full apology and her job back with promotion and compensation." The words rang in Emily's ears. Her job back. Her name cleared. Justice, finally. But Emily stayed quiet for a moment. She looked at Sarah, who now stood frozen, her eyes full of fear and regret. And then Emily spoke, her voice calm but strong. "I don't want the job back," she said simply. Everyone looked surprised. "I don't want to work for people who believed lies without asking for the truth. I will build something better. For myself. On my own terms." Her father smiled proudly. The directors nodded, embarrassed but understanding. Emily turned and walked out of the room, her father right beside her. Sarah tried to follow, desperate to explain, but the security guards stepped between them, stopping her. It was over. Emily had won. Outside the building, Emily breathed in the fresh air deeply. The sun was shining brightly now, as if the world itself was celebrating her victory. Her father placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did well," he said. "You didn't just win today. You showed everyone your true strength." Emily smiled for the first time in a long time. A real, honest smile. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered, "for believing in me." He hugged her tightly. "You never needed me to believe in you," he said. "You had the power inside you all along. You just needed to see it." That evening, they sat together at home, a cozy fire burning in the fireplace. Emily looked around. The familiar walls, the family pictures, the warmth of love. She was finally safe. But more importantly, she was finally free. Not just from Sarah, not just from lies, but from fear, from self-doubt, from everything that had tried to break her. Now she was ready to dream again. Ready to build a new life. A life where no one could kick her out. A life where she would stand tall, no matter what. Because she had learned the most important lesson of all. True strength comes not from power, but from never giving up on yourself. A few months had passed since the truth came out. Emily now lived in a small apartment near the river. It was not fancy, but it was hers. She had decorated it with warm lights, soft curtains, and a shelf full of books she loved. The place felt peaceful, just like her heart. She had started her own online business, helping people write resumes, prepare for job interviews, and even offering emotional support through blogs and short videos. It was something small at first, but it was growing fast. People loved her simple words, her honesty, her story. Every time someone wrote a comment like "You gave me hope" or "I didn't give up because of you," Emily felt like she had found her true purpose. She was no longer just a girl who had been kicked out unfairly. She was now a voice for those who had been silenced. One morning, she received a message on her website. "Hi, I saw your video about getting fired and standing up for yourself. I went through the same. My boss blamed me for something I didn't do. Your story made me feel stronger. Thank you." Emily smiled as she read the words. She replied, "You're not alone. Bad times pass, and good people always rise again." That afternoon, she sat by the river with her laptop and a cup of coffee. The water sparkled in the sunlight, and a soft breeze played with her hair. Her phone rang. It was her father. "Hello, Emily," he said warmly. "How's your little empire growing today?" She laughed. "Slowly, but it's real now. People are trusting me. It feels amazing." "I'm proud of you," he said, "not because you won, but because you turned pain into purpose." Emily looked at the river, thinking deeply. "I think that's the only way to heal," she said, "to help others while we heal ourselves." Her father's voice grew softer. "You're wise beyond your years, my dear. And brave. Don't ever forget that." Later that day, she received a surprise visit. It was Mr. Harris, the man who ran the shelter where she had stayed during her darkest days. He smiled kindly. I was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd check in on my strongest guest. Emily invited him in and made tea. They talked like old friends. She told him about her journey, her new business, her small but meaningful success. Mr. Harris looked around her apartment and nodded slowly. You know, Emily, he said, some people fall and stay down. But you turned your fall into a foundation. Emily's eyes softened. I couldn't have done it without the shelter, without the warmth you gave me when I had nothing. He smiled. Sometimes a little kindness in the dark is enough to light the path forward. Before leaving, Mr. Harris handed her a letter. We're trying to raise funds for expanding the shelter. Maybe you could speak about your experience someday. Help us inspire more hearts. Emily nodded immediately. I'd love to. That night, Emily sat on her balcony, writing her next blog post. She titled it, The Day I Was Kicked Out. And the day I rose. She wrote, They said I was guilty. I was not. They took my job. They broke my trust. But they could not take my strength. I fell, yes, but I did not stay on the ground. I cried. I struggled. I begged. But I kept going. And when the world finally saw the truth, I was ready to rise. To everyone who feels lost, hurt, or pushed aside, you are not weak. You are just in the middle of your story. The ending is still yours to write. Keep going. Your light will rise again. As she clicked publish, her heart felt light. The past no longer had power over her. She had forgiven, but never forgotten. She had let go, but never stopped learning. And now she was living, not for revenge, not for proof, but for purpose. One day, Emily stood on a small stage at a charity event, sharing her story with young women who had gone through similar pain. As she spoke, many wiped tears from their eyes. When she finished, the room stood up and clapped. Not for a rich woman, not for a famous one, but for a fighter. For someone who had been kicked down and still rose. Back at home that night, she lit a small candle on her windowsill. It flickered gently in the night wind, and inside her heart, a new light burned brighter than ever. The light of peace, the light of strength, the light of a new beginning.